The character Zhang Haiyang has awakened as a fighter. Just as a guardian had the skill guard, a fighter had the skill fighter transformation. It was a skill that melted all of their fears and turned it into force. Thanks to this skill, a person who had been exploited for a long time could gain a more powerful force. In that sense, Zhang Haiyang was a good candidate to be a fighter even without the unidentified wall. The problem was that he was too excited. A sky-shattering sound was heard. The fighter was a position capable of exerting as much power as possible against an executioner. Perhaps Zhang Haiyang was currently feeling like a constellation. "Don't mess around, you idiot!" I belatedly raised my voice, but Zhang Haiyang had already gone out of my reach. This was the problem with Zhang Haiyang. In fact, I wasn't afraid of Zhang Haiyang's talent. I was afraid of him running wild as a result of this talent. Kim Dokja thought, "Zhang Haiyang isn't without talent. Rather, he has too much talent." The only all-rounder in ways of survival, Zhang Haiyang. Zhang Haiyang's unidentified wall guaranteed a formidable growth only through skills obtained from the wall's transactions. Of course, it was impossible to reach the grounds of transcendence, but Zhang Haiyang could raise his skill level faster than anyone else. It was a talent that could go beyond other people's training in just a few hours. Such talent would inevitably make the owner of the talent dangerous. What are you? I barely managed to catch up with Zhang Haiyang, where he was already engaged with an executioner. The sparks of a fighter wrapped around Zhang Haiyang and protected him from the executioner's scythe. The mark isn't available for this position. Perhaps the executioner would be receiving such a message now. This are you, perhaps? However, enlightenment was too late. Zhang Haiyang overcame the executioner's scythe and grabbed its neck with a skillful move. It wasn't possible for a fighter to show this much combat power. At most, they were usually one level of power beyond the executioner. Now Zhang Haiyang was completely overwhelming the executioner. It was only possible because it was Zhang Haiyang. The caught executioner struggled like a ferocious rat, but it couldn't endure Zhang Haiyang's slowly tightening grip. There was the sound of bones breaking, and the executioner's body dangled down. Then the hem of the executioner's clothes started scattering. It was an absurd end for their existences who had dominated the industrial complex's night for decades. An executioner has been killed by a fighter. Current number of executioners remaining, 6. The citizens injured by the executioners were looking this way. Zhang Haiyang's fire lit up the night. It was like a glowing sun. However, Zhang Haiyang wasn't the sun, and it was currently night. An executioner has died! An executioner has died! No way! It's currently night! A fighter has appeared! After the end of the execution, the people hiding in the houses stretched out their heads. They were people who had been living for a long time in the shadow of the night. The citizens are influenced by the heat of the revolution. They were coming out of their houses one by one. They stared at Zhang Haiyang like he was the leader. The character Zhang Haiyang has stiffened because of fighter transformation. This jerk thought he was a revolutionary. I lightly slapped Zhang Haiyang's back. Zhang Haiyang's red-tinged eyes slowly recovered. Zhang Haiyang was belatedly aware of the pain and glared at me as he held the back of his head. That hurts. Why'd you hit me so hard? Steady your mind. You will be in trouble if you act like an idiot. It should be the crowd that is heated up. If the person who leads is swept away by the heat, the revolution won't be able to tolerate the fire and will go out before it burns properly. Those were Yu Jung-hyuk's words in the 111th regression. It was a shameful line for me to spit out, so I kept it to myself. Zhang Haiyang looked at me disapprovingly and pouted. It hurts more than the executioner. Then I hit you properly. Zhang Haiyang's current strength was limited to the scenario, and it was only when dealing with the executioners. It was dangerous to be taken in by such power. Eileen shouted in the distance. There are 2 in the west, 1 to the south. The rest are in the north. It was clear to me what these numbers meant. Let's move. Zhang Haiyang nodded, and we ran through the night. I looked at Zhang Haiyang, who was going ahead again, and heard a message in my brain. The 4th wall is looking at Zhang Haiyang with a desire to eat. No way! Don't even think about it. Just like against Nirvana and the Outer God, the 4th wall coveted Zhang Haiyang's story. It probably wasn't just Zhang Haiyang, but the Unidentified Wall as well. The 4th wall is sorry. I thought you wanted to make friends with that wall. You shouldn't eat your friend. Kim Dokja, who wanted to be friends with the 4th wall, said. It was a real brat. Wah! There were screams from the rushing crowd. A fighter has appeared. Hang in there. They screamed while wielding weapons towards the executioners. The fires of magic power popped up in various places around the industrial complex. People were fighting back. They were fighting against opponents they couldn't face. I could believe it if one of them was a revolutionary. An executioner has been killed by a fighter. Current number of executioners remaining, 5. Zhang Haiyang knocked down another executioner. Now there were only 5 remaining. Once all the executioners died, the Duke would no longer be able to hide. From then on, the real revolution would start. Kill everybody. Wah! As the citizens gained courage, the executioners gradually slowed down. No one apart from the fighter could harm an executioner during the night. Nevertheless, the important thing was atmosphere. Foolish. An executioner who swung its scythe was attacked by Zhang Haiyang. 2 executioners had already died, so this one didn't face Zhang Haiyang head-on. The executioner fled like it was frightened. The citizens watched the executioner running away and shouted, It's running away! Zhang Haiyang stepped on the low roofs of the industrial complex and chased after the executioner. Everything was flowing smoothly. At this rate, the night would pass safely. The Duke would be forced to recall the night in order to reduce the damage to the executioners. Even so, Kim Dokja was vigilant to the end. There were countless revolutionaries who died in the history of the demon world. Until the night was gone, the revolutionary should be vigilant until the end, even if I was a fake revolutionary. Kim Dokja thought, the spy Han Myung-o was caught by me, and 3 executioners died during the day. The balance of power was collapsing, and the atmosphere of the industrial complex was rapidly changing. Under these circumstances, the Duke couldn't spend the night again without a plan. At least, not the Duke Sistwitz I knew. Sure enough, I felt something flying towards my neck and reflexively leaned back. 4 scythes passed over my head and hit the roofs. My head would be gone if I had been 1 second slower. They had been hiding. Apart from the executioner that Zhang Haiyang was chasing, the 4 other executioners aimed for me. It couldn't compare to the first day. I used Bookmark to trigger Way of the Wind, but it wasn't enough to avoid all the flying attacks. The Guardian! Someone is using their vitality to protect you. The hiding Mark used guard on me. Now Mark had 2 points remaining. The executioners didn't leave, despite the effect of guard being applied to me. The stupid Kim Dokja started thinking. It felt like they were dragging out the time. I noticed the Duke's plan. The Duke knew a fighter would appear. Zhang Haiyang was in danger. I condensed the wind using Way of the Wind and made a powerful explosion behind me. I shot forward like a comet, and the perplexed executioner shouted after me, Stop! I borrowed the power of guard and Way of the Wind to break through the wall of executioners. Zhang Haiyang had gone chasing after 1 executioner. Presumably, there would also be an attack! There was a sharp scream, and I saw Zhang Haiyang flying back while bleeding. Damn it, this was why I hit him. I controlled the wind and caught the falling body. Hey, are you okay? He was coughing up blood. It wasn't a fatal injury, but it would be hard for him to continue fighting. I wanted to know who made the Knight's fighter look like this, but then I saw an oversized executioner walking toward this side. Revolutionary. It was impossible. An executioner could never win against a fighter at night. Especially this one. The collar of the executioner slowly scattered and the face of a demon was exposed. Now I realized what happened. Zhang Haiyang wasn't hit by the power of an executioner. The power of this story was incomparable, and the demon Baron and Earl I first saw when I came here. I watched him carefully and asked, "You used your head and used a technique other than execution. You aren't a duke, so you must be a marquis. Am I correct?" I asked first, "Are you the revolutionary?" "That's right, I am the revolutionary." A cheeky voice. The demon's thick eyebrows wriggled and he spoke in a somewhat languid voice. "I am Marquis Osteon." Demon Marquis Osteon. Along with Duke Sistwitz, he was one of the two marquises leading this industrial complex. I think there's one more. Oh, you have keen eyes. Another demon emerged from the darkness. This one didn't seem to have the power of an executioner. "You're also a marquis?" It wasn't the demon who answered the question. Marquis Quarteto." Marquis Quarteto stood under the moonlight as the citizens screamed. Osteon and Quarteto. The two marquises leading the Sistwitz industrial complex appeared at the same time, causing the citizens to be completely frightened. Duke Sistwitz liked things to be certain. He didn't know the identity of the enemy, so he sent out both marquises. "You created such a nuisance during this precious time. You're a big guy." Their expressions showed it was annoying to take care of a nuisance. It was understandable since they had been in control of the industrial complex for hundreds of years. After already deciding I was dead, the two marquises stared at the other citizens. The surrounding pressure soared, and the citizens were forced to kneel. The incarnations trembled and held their breaths. The marquises spoke towards them. "This is the price you will receive." The story Ruler's Command is activated. The edge of the language created by the marquises threatened the citizens. Nothing had happened yet, but the words themselves started to dominate the imaginations of the citizens. "You will lose everything valuable." They imagined losing their precious families. "You will lose the peaceful nights." They were deprived of all the nights of peace. "You will pay the price for disturbing this industrial complex." They paid a price they could never afford. "This is the meaning of revolution." The sentences fell like a final verdict. The citizens were mired in them and stared up at the marquises with frightened eyes. The marquises laughed like this situation was satisfactory. "Look, your hopes are crumbling." They decided to use this as an opportunity to consolidate the ruling system. Bihyang should see this nonsense. The two marquises turned towards me while directing their status towards me. Ordinary citizens would be terrified right now. However, while all the citizens were kneeling on the ground, I alone stood upright. The perplexed marquises stared at me and shouted again, "Look! Look at how he collapses." The marquises attempted to use their status to pressure me several times. The veins bulged as if they were exerting all their might to reveal their presence. "Collapsing! Collapse! No, this?" I slowly approached them. Kim Dokja thought. Only a fighter could deal with an executioner at the night. The enemies decided to utilize their force instead of using the positions of the scenario. Thus, it was necessary to respond to them. It can't be ignored at this time. If I opened this power, my incarnation body would shake a lot. However, it was inevitable to deal with a marquise. I needed to use the minimum of strength. I had to get rid of them with optimal efficiency. "You!" I knew what they wanted to ask and preempted them. "Oh, who am I?" A Marquis grade noble was strong. Still, no matter how strong they were, it was just a measurement of the incarnations. They were those who didn't even match the upper grade constellations. I slowly closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I felt somewhat uncomfortable. I had never done this since becoming a constellation. The constellation status is released. The status, which couldn't be compared to the previous one, crushed the time and space in the area.